We've been watching a CBS News special report on the deadly midair collision near Reagan Airport, just outside of Washington. I'm Errol Barnett at the CBS Broadcast Center here in New York. D.C. fire officials say they do not believe at this hour there are any survivors. First responders are now working on recovery operations in what they've described as extremely difficult conditions there on the Potomac River. You're looking at live pictures, the sun just rising there in the nation's capital. We heard them say that as first responders headed into the waters to find survivors, they encountered frigid temperatures and ice. At this hour, 27 bodies have been recovered from the plane and one body from the Black Hawk helicopter. This happened fewer than 12 hours ago, so it's still very early. U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy told reporters there was nothing unusual about the flight path of the American Airlines plane or the helicopter ahead of this crash, and we heard him just say moments ago this was absolutely preventable. We'll still listen in to any new information that does come out of that press conference at DCA. We also have a phone number for you. If you potentially knew anybody on that aircraft, you're encouraged to call 1-800-679-8215 to get more information from American Airlines. Let's now listen and connect with Jeff Wise. He's an aviation journalist and the host of Finding MH370 podcast. Jeff, this is horrific. This is horrible to have to report on and discuss. And from what we just heard at that press conference, there's no new information or anything they can confirm other than, yeah, both aircraft were on a typical route. What do you make of what we're witnessing now and the lack of details this early in the investigation?
Well, I'm not surprised by the lack of detail. As you said, it's been less than 12 hours, and this is a somewhat chaotic situation. Something clearly went wrong. I would push back against the idea that both of these aircraft were on normal flight routes. I mean, they obviously should not have both been at the same place at the same time. But it does fit into a pattern of in recent years, there's been a spate of near misses at U.S. airports. This is a safety concern that's been raised, and unfortunately, it obviously was not adequately addressed.
And help us understand previous reports of near misses. We've seen it at other airports. I'm thinking LaGuardia here in New York. But here in the nation's capital, the Pentagon is right next to this airport, in addition to, the federal seat of government. Why is it so unusual that this happened?
Well, there's a number of factors at play here, really. One of them, this is an older airport. It's quite close into the city center. It's small. It's right next to the most protected airspace in the world. It's also very close to users who have incredible power over the aviation system itself. Members of Congress have been lobbying for this airport to carry out more flights, even after the FAA had expressed concern that it was already overloaded. And in fact, the flight that was being carried out was a route that had been added just last year under pressure from a congressman who used it to get home. And so this is a classic safety dilemma when you have forces pushing back against increased safety for other reasons, whether it's to save money or to increase convenience for powerful people.
Jeff Wise, stand by for us. We want to link up now with CBS News Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Skanger. You are at the airport there, DCA, Reagan National. This press update just finished behind you. Nicole, I'm wondering what stood out to you as far as new information and anything that helps explain how this happened.
Yeah, absolutely, Errol. It was an interesting press conference, certainly a litany of different law enforcement officials along with lawmakers here, but perhaps the most fascinating comment coming from the Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. It's just his second day on the job here, agreeing with the President of the United States, saying this was absolutely preventable. Now, he was careful not to get into the investigation too much. Of course, that will be handed over to the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, today, and they are beginning that work today and will be on the ground to brief journalists later today. But he did say that while it was clear that the helicopter here, that Army Black Hawk, was aware of the plane, it was not clear if the plane was aware of the helicopter. That said, he did point to somewhat normal traffic between the airplane and the tower, and said that both flight paths of the helicopter and of this plane were standard operating procedure, fairly normal here. So again, this raising a little more in the way of questions about what possibly could have been wrong. Now, as far as this next phase of the recovery efforts, obviously we are pivoting here from rescue, search and rescue, to recovery. I asked Chief Donnelly, who is in charge of D.C. Fire EMS here on the ground and is lead of the Unified Command, if he is confident that all 67 individuals will be recovered. He said yes. Right now, they are poring over 3 different debris fields, and they have, of course, located the fuselage, that main body of the plane, but it is broken up into 3 pieces. And lawmakers I spoke with earlier, as well as law enforcement officials, did stress that it's a bit of a precarious process now. This recovery process, I mean, the airplane is submerged in about 5 to 8 feet of water, the helicopter inverted upside down. So a bit of a precarious process. And Donnelly saying that in addition to actually recovering those bodies, there's a process by which the the Virginia medical examiner and the Army medical examiner need to confirm each individual. And so we hope to learn more about some of the victims here. We know that there are support services that have been stood up for their family members, that some of them are nearby in a neighboring terminal receiving support from American Airlines and other local services as well.
That's right, Nicole, and we shared a phone number that they delivered at the press conference for relatives of victims who want to find out more. And you noted there's a family assistance center there at DCA. There is a similar family assistance center in Wichita, Kansas, where the American Airlines flight had departed from last night. And I think what will be so confusing to everyone who had a loved one on board or needs to travel and can't get through DCA is that, according to the officials there, these were standard flight paths. An aviation expert we spoke with said it's called the Mount Vernon visual approach from the south toward DCA. And Chris Van Cleve, our senior transportation correspondent, was saying typically helicopters flying near DCA have to lower to about 200 feet or lower when they're flying near the busy airport. You add all of that together, plus what they would and wouldn't say at this press conference, in that they don't want to speculate, in the fact that this was a military training exercise. It doesn't mean those soldiers on board weren't skilled or able or fully knowledgeable about what to do. It does leave you with that major question of how this happened. What might be some of the early clues?
Well, certainly some questions here regarding communication failures, potentially. The fact that the Secretary of Transportation was saying that the helicopter was aware of the plane, but perhaps the plane, unclear if the plane was aware of the helicopter. Certainly, there will be questions regarding how much air traffic control knew at the time, but nothing really stood out to us in that press conference as an indicator of what might have gone wrong. Of course, we do know that DoD helicopter, that Black Hawk coming from nearby Fort Belvedere in Virginia, was on a training mission, but the Secretary of Transportation there making it clear that there was no indication that because of that there was some sort of lack of training that would have impeded those helicopter pilots. We also heard from the American Airlines CEO, who spoke to the experience of the pilots aboard that flight, that regional airliner from Wichita, Kansas to Washington, D.C., saying that the pilot there had 6 years of experience. His first officer had 2 years of experience, that, you know, there was a team of 4 on board the plane. So, of course, a lot of questions here regarding what could have possibly gone wrong. I think all of us are scratching our heads this morning, asking ourselves, how could a crash have happened just so close to the airport, particularly in Washington, D.C., which we know, I've been up on helicopters with MPD, with the Department of Energy, with several federal law enforcement agencies here. It's a very controlled airspace. You can't fly a drone in Washington, D.C. It is one of the most meticulously monitored airspaces in the country. I will say some of our colleagues from CBS News pressed both the mayor and the transportation secretary on how Americans should feel traveling across the United States. And the Secretary of Transportation, very forcefully said that Americans should feel reassured that the United States still has the safest airspace in the world.
Yeah, an unprecedented time of aviation safety in the country, some 16 years without a crash, now broken by this tragedy. Nicole Skangas giving us the latest there from DCA. We appreciate that, Nicole. Thank you so much. And for so many of us, Washington correspondents and folks who've been in and out of DC, this is a place you fly out of frequently. It's a very busy airport. Let's bring in Jeff Wise, once again, an aviation journalist and host of the Finding MH370 podcast. Jeff, what's jumped out to me and what we're learning is the difference in communication at this airport between what the soldiers aboard the military helicopter, how they would have communicated compared to those on board the jet. The aircraft broadcasts in VHF, the Black Hawk broadcasts in UHF. Can you better help us understand what that means and why they wouldn't have been in communication with each other?
I think a really important thing to understand about this crash is that the jet was coming in on a very narrowly defined path. It was coming in on a standard route that planes come in every minute and a half, one after another, boom, boom, boom. They're following a very precise route through the sky, and they're doing that under the control of the tower. The Black Hawk was not flying that kind of well-defined route. It seems pretty clear to me. This is very early, so I don't want to speculate, but the jet was on a very specific path. The Black Hawk was not. It seems like the Black Hawk was not where it was supposed to be. That's where I would definitely be looking at. Yes, they're operating on different frequencies. They're talking to the tower. They're not talking to each other. There has been ATC audio released in which the tower is telling the Black Hawk, do you see this plane? Go around it or behind it. So clearly they were asking the Black Hawk to basically see and avoid. They were giving them the responsibility. You look for the traffic, you avoid it. And obviously that didn't happen.
And the issue with that question from the control tower to a helicopter, make sure you see the aircraft, may have been a point of confusion on the helicopter because this aircraft was coming in on runway 33, I believe, which is a newer defined, you say narrowly defined, a newer route to accommodate for what is already a very busy and very small airport. We don't want to speculate, but we are within the first 12 hours of this happening. Does that possibly help explain where some of the confusion may be, that they did see an aircraft, but not the one the air traffic control tower was warning them about?
Absolutely. It's nighttime. You've got the lights of the runway off to your right as you're coming south, and you see the flashing strobe lights, the navigational lights of the aircraft. You can't tell just by looking at it which plane they're talking about. And so you might, because so many planes are coming in, yeah, as you say, you might have one aircraft in sight and think it's another one.
It's stunning to know that it could be as simple as that. We're talking about the nation's capital. We're talking about the seat of government. We're talking about, the seat of the military. The Pentagon is close to where this just happened, and that in the end, we don't know yet, and they did not share during the press conference any indication of this, but it could have been a visual mix-up. What type of safeguards are in place to prevent this type of thing?
Well, this is highly controlled airspace, very sensitive airspace, and it requires training, it requires rules, and obviously there has been a slip up, like human error. Human beings are still an incredibly fallible part of the air traffic control system, and people get disoriented, they get confused, and this kind of thing happens all the time, and it's just a question of making sure your rules, your training are all geared towards preventing it in the future. But there has to be a revamp. People have been sounding the alarm about near misses at airports for years now. Clearly, it's past due to take those alarms seriously.
And we're speaking with Jeff Wise. We're looking at live pictures of the Potomac River there outside Washington as a recovery effort continues to recover the debris and the victims and their bodies from the crash and a midair collision between an American Airlines jet and a Black Hawk military helicopter. Jeff, thank you for joining us this morning. Let's now speak with commercial airline pilot Captain Lauren Einsetler to speak more about this collision and how it may have happened. I'm not sure how much you were able to pick up from our previous conversation, but there's just desperate question of how this can happen. And it may in the end have been just a visual mix-up. I'm wondering, based on the early information we have, what your thoughts are.
Well, based on the information from the air traffic, the recordings that we've heard, that it sounds like one of the pilots on the Black Hawk helicopter had actually said that at first they did not have the regional jet in sight. And the second pilot had clicked on and said, yes, they have the regional aircraft in sight, the regional jet, and they had separation, which obviously was not the case. So then you have to wonder, okay, did one of those pilots or both in the Black Hawk helicopter assume that they were looking at something when it wasn't actually what they called in sight?
Exactly, and that was my early thought as I was just speaking with Jeff Wise, because the runway that this American Airlines jet was flying toward, runway 33, the plane is on a Mount Vernon visual approach, as we've learned. They're heading into runway 33. All of this is typical and routine, while the helicopter, typically they are supposed to fly at less than 200 feet. That does not appear to be the case here. You have to then look at that communication and that audio. And in that audio, as soon as the collision happens, you hear the gasp and the shock among air traffic controllers. So obviously a disaster and a tragedy that wasn't intended. But further explain how a simple visual mix-up could be the cause of this tragedy.
Well, Errol, it's very hard sometimes at night, as we all know. So when you're driving and let's say, you have like dark, wet road, for example. So from a pilot's perspective, as we're coming in, you see at night, you don't have quite the same visual acuity as you do in the daytime. So in this case, you have the dark river, you have the airport lighting. So with the closure rate and the speed by which both aircrafts were going, it's very likely that they just didn't see the movement and that the position lights from the regional jet, from the perspective of the Black Hawk pilot, could have been blended in with the airport lighting, or even potentially they might have been looking at instead one of the aircrafts that were taking off at that time from runway 1.
Captain Lauren Einsetler, thank you so much for connecting with us and just help us digest what we do and don't know so far on this midair collision. We appreciate your time.